All right, knife nerds. We're gonna do two. We're gonna do two knife reviews in one. Put them both in the title. Put links to both of them. But I went over to my friends at Old Town Cutlery and was looking for one, and then happened to just find the other. So I got another Rough Ryder here. It's a slip joint, but it's a modern slip joint. So apparently there's Rough Ryder, there's Rough Ryder Reserve. So your Rough Ryder Reserves are your more premium, just nicer finish, D2 steel, Mikarta, copper or brass liners, just really, really nice put together. I've got a Barlow, then I've got this, which is, they call it the Tear Jerk or something like that, or something, whatever. Anyway, you got those compared to some other knives. And then they've got their, their base model knives, which are, really good value, but, they're basic. They're not crap knives. They're actually fairly decent for what they are, but they're not as good as the reserves. Now, some of these I've got on sale for $35, but mostly they tend to go between $55 and $65 for the reserves. And they're nicer than any of the case knives I've ever had. They're really, really nice action, high quality, well-produced knives. So I saw this one, and it wasn't a reserve, so I was like, I wonder if I'll like it. And I did. Comes with a nice little snack, so if you get hungry, you can eat that. What is it? Well, this is the model Rough Ryder 2285. So it's blue canvas micarta. This was a very interesting knife to me because I picked it up in the micarta. Now, when you look at micarta, sometimes it's really, the epoxy is the top layer. So there's not a lot of traction. It's nice, but it's basically, micarta is kind of like epoxy resin with linen or different kinds of fabric in it. This one, you're feeling on the top. You're not feeling much of the texture of the actual burlap or linen. This is linen. Like, the top layer is linen. It's really nice and fabricy. It's not soft. It's hard as a rock, but it's really nice. It's got a lot of grip. When it gets wet, it'll still keep grip and give you traction. Over time, the oil from your fingers, you'll get like this kind of a patina kind of look to it. Micarta wears in really nice over time, and it gets like a nice weathered look. It's very durable. It's really good stuff. So I got this one. Ooh, that action is nice already. For a couple reasons. One, I really liked the micarta. I really like the blade design. I mean, that's a really nice, really good stabby point. It's a Wharncliffe blade. Measurements on the blade are 2 3/4. Overall length of 6.5. It's on the smaller side, but it's just a little bit bigger than the Barlow. So it's kind of in that, if you want that small, discreet, if I pull out my Lion Steel Barlow with their Wharncliffe, or I guess that's a sheepsfoot blade. It's just a little bit bigger than that. Now, it's not longer than it. It just gives you a little more to handle to hold on to. It also comes, so this was $33, $32.95. Micarta, adjustable pivot. We'll get to that in a minute. And a VG10 blade. So I'm looking at that and I'm like, that is insane to have a knife like for $32. This is awesome. I really like this a lot. It's got a nice curve. I can get a whole hand on it. So barely, but more than I can here. I mean, I can, but it's a little small, so it tends to twist. I got this just because I really love, the classic Barlow design. It's just a neat, very classic, gentlemanly. And I am a gentleman, so I need a gentleman's knife. The Tear Jerk, which is a 2-blade, which comes with your same basic blade, just bigger than the Barlow, but then it also comes with the more utilitarian Wharncliffe. This one just comes with a bigger, heavier Wharncliffe, and it's very comfortable, very ergonomic. Razor sharp. I mean, really sharp. Doesn't quite do the push test. That's okay. A lot of knives don't. But that is beautifully sharp right out of the box. It's a flat grind. Nice little swedge up top, not too sharp. The edges are not super beveled like some knives, but it's just it's not sharp enough to be uncomfortable in any way, but just enough to where if you were to use a spark, you needed it to strike a spark, you could. So that's nice. What I really like about this is the adjustable pivot. On most slip joints, you can't see the pin because they put the pin in, they peen it over with a hammer and mash it, and then they polish it flat and flush. So if they do a good job, which they do, you don't see it. But it's one of those things like when you're adjusting the tension of the knife, that's how it's set. You press it together. When you're hammering it, if you hit it one hammer less than you should, then the blade's wiggly and wobbly. These ones typically aren't. I don't know how they get them this tight without being binding. But if you peen it too much, then it binds the blade, and it doesn't have that really nice snappy action. These are very buttery smooth. They were like that right out of the box. And this one is no different. Now, what's different about this is that it doesn't use the pivot type. So you can actually go in and tighten this. And I usually go over all these things. Anytime I get a new knife, just to go over it with Loctite. I've got my little tool here. Looks like we got T6s and a T8. And so you go in and just, make sure everything's tight. But the blade centering, perfect. There's no blade wrap going on. That's where your blade snaps shut because it's a really tough spring. And it sometimes hits that little nubbin in there. That's the back spring because there is a pin that goes through the back here. You can't see it because it's under the Mikarta scale. But that's really sweet action. That is nowhere near that. It's not going to hit that. That's a great little utility knife. That is a gentlemanly, very clean, nice lines. Fits your hand well. Satin finish. The machining on the clip is nice. It's nice and deep, unlike some of the Bokers where sometimes if you don't have a thumbnail, if you chew them or you're constantly breaking them off, working on shit like I usually am. This has enough sticking up and out where instead of that just being that little groove that you kind of got your finger down into, you just kind of pinch the blade and it opens right up. The tension's pretty good. I mean, that's a strong spring. That's just going to loosen up even more over time. We'll put a drop of oil down in there, but that is excellent. Excellent, excellent action. Get a little drop down in there. You got to lube it up once in a while. Yep, we'll let that sit, and then we'll wipe off the excess once it kind of seeps down in there. But beautiful, beautiful, nice little pocket knife. That is an elegant little cool knife. So that's the first one I got. And I do like slip joints a lot. I know most of the time I'm carrying things like a bug out, but I've also got my Kaiser. That's the one I happen to have on me today, the Towser K from Kaiser. Amazing action, CM 154 CM steel. Just a beautiful, beautiful knife. But I've always had a soft spot for these, for the slip joints, for the older style. There's just something cool about it. It's not because I'm old. I'm not that old. But there's just something neat about something that has a history. I like having the latest gadgets and things like that and the newest, coolest stuff. But there's something cool about, a design that goes back 150 years that's actually still made that way. By real craftsmen and handmade and stuff. And here's another example of that. That's my Great Eastern cutlery. It's a canoe-shaped handle, but the blade pattern is from a Stockman. So it's an interesting, nice little combo. Beautiful, really nicely made. It's a $180 knife, so it should be. But I look at these. I look at the Lion steels and these Rough Riders. I mean, the value that you get out of some of these Chinese knives. I love my Benchmade. The Benchmade Bug Out is one of the best EDC knives ever made. However, this is $145. To me, I bought it. I don't regret it. Would I buy another one? No. It's not really worth $145. It's thin little bits of metal. It's plastic. It's a stamped wire, or not wire, but it's a stamped clip. The blade's S30V, but it's a very toothy edge. It's nice enough. But this is a $70 or $80 knife. And if it was made by Kershaw, that's exactly what you would pay for it. It's nice. But this $75 Kaiser Towser K 154 cm bigger blade G10 on bearings, not washers. When you look at these knives that are, I mean, this is $32. I could buy 4.5 of these for what I paid for that. And same thing with all these other ones. These knives are just as well built. Now, I'm not saying all Benchmades, but there are certain knives where you're paying for the name. It's a cool design. Other people are trying to copy it because it is super thin and light. And it's, it's tough enough, but it flexes the handle. I mean, look at it very easily. It feels like a cheap knife. This does not feel like a cheap knife. Well, this is $145, so it doesn't, and certainly the $180 one doesn't. But none of these feel like cheap knives. It really is amazing what you get. So I like that a lot. I'll throw these other ones off to the side. Really like the Lion Steel too. But the Lion Steel is also adjustable pivot. So you can get that action exactly where you want. So let's close these down. And that brings us to our twofer. Is a knife from Civivi. Now this one did cost a little bit more, but still cheap. And that is the Thug 2. What is a Thug 2, you might ask? Well, we're going to find out. We're going to find out together. Let's check it out. And then I got to figure out what to do for dinner. Maybe I'm going to go get sushi. I don't know. All right. Nice microfiber, care instructions. A little nicer packaging. But, the knife is 2.5 times as much, so okay. Little sticker. Nice fur-lined faux fur. So this is the Thug. This is a little guy, but it's very cool. Deep carry pocket clip. It is left or right. It is left or right-handed carry, but it is tip-up only. G10 black. Everything just blacked out, murdered out. Thumb opening. That's an interesting blade. I saw this and I was like, that's the size of my Elementum, and the Elementum just doesn't give me much to hang on to. You can just get a grip on that. And what's nice about this is these edges are all nicely rounded and tapered. So unlike the Elementum and some of the other knives that are really small, that corner kind of, when you do try to grip it, it punches into your knuckle. That doesn't. That's a wee little knife. But it actually, you could do some cutting. It's not a big knife, but I can just make a fist around it. And because it's tall this way, that's an interesting design. It's also a compound grind. So we got a hollow grind and then a flat grind. We got a swedge up top. Nice. Jesus Christ, that's a sharp tip. Just the tip. That is a very sharp little tip. Yeah. That is a sharp blade too. Will it do a push test? Huh. Yes, it do. So that one, ooh, that is like a frickin' razor blade, man. You hear that? Yeah, that is a sharp, wicked little knife. Size comparison. Size is important, right? Compare it to the Benchmade, because I think that gives it a little bit better. Because most people know what a Benchmade bug out looks like size-wise. So that is... It's a little heavier, although... So this, I think, is around... This is 1.8 ounces. This is like probably 2.8. It's about an ounce heavier. It's on ball bearings. Yeah, this one's on ball bearings. So really sweet action. Liner lock, blade centering. Perfect. Civivi is just knocking it out of the park lately, man. That is a nice little stealthy... This is something that, when you think about what the intended role of the bug out is, it's just to be small, thin, discreet, melt away in your pocket. You don't even know it's there. Not call attention to itself like the bigger tactical knives that are shiny and this and that. This, I think, is going to be, it's just a very simple, it's a very deep carry pocket clip. It's black. It's just going to kind of blend in. While it's thicker, it's also shorter. That is something that very, very discreet. If you're holding it in your hand, this kind of sticks out. You can very discreetly hold this knife and flick it open and be ready for action. You can get a good grip on it. I would say that as a hard use knife, I mean, this is going to be better at some tasks, like maybe slicing and food prep and stuff, but it's really skinny. And again, if you got big man paws like this, you always feel like you're trying to grip a pencil. So you can hold it, you get a whole hand on it, but you're really, you got to really squeeze in to get your fingers locked in on it, as opposed to something bigger, that's just more natural. I'm just used to gripping bigger stuff. I'm just going to leave it at that. This is going to be a little bit more like that. So this one doesn't have as much of length, but it's got girth. Some people prefer girth. You tell me. That feels good, though, for a little tiny knife. I wasn't sure. I saw it on their website, and I went in to look at this one, and I was like, oh, yeah, I see they got some of these in stock. And I'm like, oh, is that going to be any good? But it really is. So blade steel on this one. We talked about that one. That's VG10. Nitro V. Yeah, so that's a decent blade steel. Nitro V is good steel. Civivi does a really good job with the heat treat. What I like about this is that this blade, when you look at it this way, you're like, okay, that's also a 3 3/4 inch blade. However, because it's so tall, the actual cutting edge on this is significantly more than this blade that has the same length. In fact, I would say this one that has more of a 3.5 inch blade, this has at least as much, if not a tiny bit more, because you've got that cutting edge, which is 1 5/8. Then you've got that, which is 1 1/4. So, yeah, that blade, the cutting edge is longer than the blade itself because it's tall and because of all that curve and belly. That should be a nice, good slicer. You got that secondary sort of point. It's not quite a Tonto. It's kind of a modified Tonto. But you got a little bit of belly up here. You got a good, for piercing into like a plastic packaging or cardboard or something like that. I'm very impressed. $32, $82. And honestly, I'm trying to feel the quality here. I mean, as far as like feeling the fit and finish and the sturdiness of it, I like Civivi. I'm not saying this is overpriced. For $82, this is an excellent knife. It's excellent steel. It's excellent materials. Beautifully executed. It's got really good fit and finish. Everything's perfectly rounded and chamfered. There's no weird gaps. Everything is symmetrical. Everything is even. The blade centering's perfect. Lockup is perfect. The ball bearing action, perfect. This is a hell of a value for $82. But I'm feeling this little guy, and I'm like, ugh. This is less than half the price. And it's got Mikarta. And it's also got VG10. This is a sweet, sweet little knife. They both are. I would recommend either of these. I'll put some links out there. I got them at Old Town Cutlery. But you can go there and get it. Order it from them. They'll ship it out. You can get them on Amazon, Blade HQ. I mean, these are knives you can get just about anywhere. But really nice action. The Slipjoint obviously is not going to be a one-handed opening. You would be hard pressed because that's spring, but notice how my finger got, if I let go of that would have go gunk right on my finger. So this is going to be more of your traditional. It's not going to be tactical. It's going to be two-handed opening. And that's fine. That's the type of knife it is. That's the type of, most slip joints are like that. Very few slip joints are one-hand opening, especially the ones that got really nice, strong, snappy springs. So which one do I like better? I don't know. I mean, this one, I think from an aesthetic, I actually prefer this one. Aesthetically, that's a cool knife. That is a very good piercer. It doesn't lock, but that's got good grip, good traction. It's small, it's light, fits in your pocket. If you pull that out at the office or something, nobody would be giving you too much of a weird look. You start pulling out knives and, they just see it opening and flying open, and they're like, oh my God, is that a switchblade? Like, that matters. But, this one just kind of sits there and nobody would give it a second look. It's a really good for doing draw cuts. It's a flat edge, so it's not going to be as good of a slicer as a knife like this that's got a belly or even that. For all that height, typically you'll got a knife blade like that and you're like, oh, it won't be as good a slicer, but it is very thin. That's a very thin blade. That's a very nice edge. It's not very deep, so if you had like a big apple or something you're trying to do, there's going to be limitations to it, but sometimes you just want that little discreet, just called the Thug. It's almost like a little tiny fighting knife. Never tried fighting with a knife. Always swords or larger weapons I've been trained in, but nothing that small. So don't know how good it would be, but I guess if you know what you're doing, and if you can't carry a gun, it's better than nothing. And certainly having that fast one-handed opening, having the pocket clip so you know right where it is in your pocket, ready to grab it at a moment's notice, having it lock, that's all going to be better for those types of knife uses. If you just need something in your pocket to cut up an apple or open up a package or an Amazon box or something like this is beautiful. It's weird. It's almost as nice as the Rough Ryder Reserves, but it's not the Reserve line. I don't get it. I don't know how they do this, but they're making some really, really nice stuff. So anyway, that's 20 minutes, longer than I would normally do for a knife review, but I did 2 of them. So I'm hoping you'll forgive me for that. So anyway, take care. Civivi Thug 2 and the Rough Ryder 225, I believe. I'll put links to both in there. Very cool knives on both. Highly recommend this one. For the money, why wouldn't you? VG10 and Mikarta and an adjustable pivot. That's just awesome. Most slip joints you can't take apart and clean and put them back together and adjust them. It's got some phosphor bronze washers in there. Smooth action. Excellent. There you have it.